All right, so I got an assistant now within Zoom. Okay, everybody, so welcome to our event. You are here at another great HBCU Connect partnership event with Sage. Very excited for this event. First thing I usually like to do is go over our agenda for the evening so that you all know what to expect. Then I will introduce myself, and then I will sort of set the stage for how you can take advantage of this opportunity. Because when we have these hiring events, they are not just for show. So a lot of people know when HBCU Connect hosts an event, it's not like a career fair where you stand in line and you have your resume in hand and you get to the booth and they say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any jobs, but we just want to be here. This is not that kind of event. Sage actually has job opportunities. They are actually partnering with us specifically to make hires. So the opportunity for you is that you can get a really good look. You can introduce yourself, like I said in the chat. You can actually direct message some of our speakers, some of the recruiters that are on as well, and get to know folks better. And we're going to have a program for you. So first, like I said, I'm going to introduce myself, give you guys a little bit of background on the partnership. Second, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, who is Kay Dexter. Then after introducing Kay will speak for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and we may have a little bit of dialogue as well. You will also have an opportunity to ask questions. So if anyone from the Sage team says something that interests you and you have a question, you can actually drop those questions into the chat. And I'm also going to encourage the Sage team to answer questions in the chat and keep an eye on the chat. And let's make this a really interactive event. Okay, so after I introduce Kay and Kay does the keynote for 10 to 15 minutes, then I will introduce the team of panelists, like I said, that have graciously taken their time out to share their experiences, share how they ended up working at Sage, what they do at Sage, and why it's a great place to work from their perspective. So I'll introduce each team member. Each team member will have about 5 minutes to speak. Then we will go into a panel discussion. Now, after each panelist introduces themselves and you know who they are, and maybe they work in an area that you're interested in, feel free to ask them questions in the chat. And once we get to our panel discussion, I will ask all of our presenters from Sage to turn on their video and their audio, and we'll have a conversation with a few questions that I have for the team from a cultural perspective so that you guys can get to know the company better. Then I'm also going to give you an opportunity to ask questions live through the chat. So if you have questions for the team or the panelists and you want to get to know the company better, you can ask those questions in the chat and I will read them off to our panelists. Then I'll introduce a member of the HR team at Sage to talk about next steps. So, hopefully you're really excited about the opportunities, you want to take advantage. So you'll have the opportunity to do that and learn what those next steps will be once we get to that portion of the event. And then it's pretty much thank you and good night. I'll send out the recording of the event. I'll also email the next steps to you after the event. So that's our agenda for the evening. Now, a little bit about myself. My name is Will Moss. I'm the CEO of HBCU Connect. I've been working on HBCU Connect since 1999. This is a passion project for me that has turned into what I do for a living. I have a small team, but very potent team here in Columbus, Ohio. And we help people get opportunities. And specifically, we started out serving the HBCU community. So a lot of you are probably already familiar with us, but also a lot of you guys might be new to us as we reached out to you to invite you to be a part of our network to learn more about Sage. So welcome to all of you. We are here for you. We want you to take advantage of this opportunity. And let me tell you a little bit about our partnership with Sage and how we actually started doing events like this. So about 8 years ago, one of our partners asked us to help introduce them to the talent that was in our network. And we started hosting events all over the country. And as we got better and better at hosting those events in physical locations, we started to also help more and more clients do these types of events to help people network and land job opportunities. Once COVID hit, we started doing these events virtually instead of physically. And so that created the opportunity that we have now with Sage, because Sage became a partner about a year ago. We started to partner on getting their jobs out. Also, a little bit of branding activity so people knew who Sage was. But now is a real hands-on opportunity for you to meet some of the folks at Sage and the opportunities that they currently have available. So that is the opportunity for you. Like I said, there's a such thing as a branding event where you just go and you show up and you learn about a company and you go home. This is a hiring event. So you'll not only learn about the company, but we want you to take advantage and apply for the job opportunities, talk to the people that you meet here, network with the people, send LinkedIn invites to the people. And then they have committed to also follow up with you guys that are interested in their opportunity. So that's enough said and enough about me. Let's talk about Sage. So I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, who is Kay Dexter. So Kay, if you're ready, feel free to turn on your video and audio and take away the mic.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Awesome. All right. So we're so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Will, and the HBCU Connect team. I mean, the Sage colleagues that are on, and I see all the shout outs of the varying HBCUs that are out there. And so if you'll go to the next slide, just a little bit about me. And so you'll see how the HBCU comes into play with me and my fellow colleagues here. But I currently am a senior marketing competitive intelligence manager at Sage. And of course, I am a proud product of an HBCU, the unsinkable, indestructible home of the Golden Rams, the Albany State University. Yes, and I see Bethune-Cookman out there. I see, who else do I see? Prairie View, I think I saw, Alcorn State, another ASU, and North Carolina A&T. You may have a fellow Aggie out there, and you may see her soon, but Albany State University was where I got my little roots from, my home, of course. It is a family school for my family. And yes, the unsinkable, Anthony. All right. It's a family school for us. My brother attended Albany State University, as well as my mother. And then both on my father and my mother's side, we have graduates of ASU. And if you've ever visited the campus of ASU and you've seen the centennial commemorative mural, my brother, a graduate of ASU, painted that mural, and he was inducted into the Smithsonian in the African American History Museum. So there is a lineage and a heritage of those Rams that that I'm very proud of. Also at Albany State, I had the pleasure of pledging and being initiated into one of the greatest sororities. Okay, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Delta Rho chapter. So I'm still serving locally, regionally, and nationally, and some of my sorors are here today as well. So we're here to just make sure that you understand who Sage is. I got my master's degree at Troy State. I'm a green belt, Lean Six Sigma green belt, and then also I'm a level 6 of pragmatic marketing. Marketing is is my core, and I love it. I have my career focus up here, and one of the things I think is most interesting is I've been to all of these headquarters of these major brands, with the exception of Apple. And to think about coming from being a military brat, growing up overseas, being told that I had to go to Albany State University because I had never lived in the United States, and then having that HBCU, all of the diverse Blackness around me, it just set me up to be able to walk into the halls of Nike and see all of Michael Jordan's, every shoe that was ever created, shoes that you all have never seen, and to, walk on Microsoft's campus and stand next to the little form of Bill Gates and the team that created Microsoft. This little girl that grew up in Germany, from Albany, small Benny, yes, has had the pleasure of doing a lot of different things. One of the career highlights is that Stand Up to Cancer MasterCard. I was on that team, and that really was something that was invaluable and just made me feel proud to be on a team. But look, enough about me. Let's have a conversation. My goal today in these 10 to 15 minutes that Will has allowed me to have is to help you understand Sage. It is really to help you understand the company that you're going to go and you may look at. I believe it's important that in order for you to select a company, you have to know where that company has been, because you have to match that company with your destiny and your path. You're not only just looking for a job or a career path or career move, you're looking for what is next on your destiny ladder and your pathway. So we want you to look at Sage. So who are we? We are a global market leader headquartered in Newcastle, England. And actually it's Newcastle upon Tyne. Tyne is a river that runs straight through the city that divides the city. On one half, it's the actual, people where they live. On the other half of the city, it's totally industrial and corporations. And our goal at Sage every day, and the colleagues that work there, is essentially to provide the best cloud technology to small and medium-sized businesses. But the key to this is that we come in every day because those small and medium-sized businesses have taken the risk to become entrepreneurs. So we are helping people thrive on a daily basis. On the next slide, we always say that every business has a story. Every single business has a story. And Sage began as a startup. And now we've got a multi-billion-dollar company that's global, but it began with 3 men who essentially, one was a printer. And of course, my Sage colleagues, they'll correct me if this is the story that they weren't told in their orientation, but one was a printer. And what he wanted to do was simply be able to send quotes to people who wanted him to print books, flyers, whatever in the business. And so he got with 2 other men. One was an actual computer expert, and then another was an actual student in accounting. And they sat at a bar, at a pub, and this is the story that I was told. Now, 12,000, we've got 12,000 colleagues around the globe. You could probably get 12,000 different stories, but this is what I was told 5.5 years ago. They were at a bar, they decided, hey, we're gonna create Sage. This is what we wanna do. We wanna help people like us. And apparently there was a sage leaf in a drink that someone had, since there's, in a British pub, British bar. And they decided that, hey, we should name it Sage because we're giving advice, we're giving wisdom. And so that's what I was told based on how we got our name. But look, this timeline is a chronological timeline of who we are. We will turn 40 in June. And so as we as colleagues look back on what we've done and what we've accomplished, we've had the chance to enter varying markets. You all may or may not be familiar with Peachtree Accounting, but Peachtree Accounting is the actual company that Sage acquired in 1991, that we currently use that same foundational principles of accounting software today. We entered into additional 7 different markets. We launched what is called Sage Business Cloud Accounting, which is specifically for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. Just got my tax ID, and I think I need accounting software. And then we decided, hey, we kind of need to move from this desktop to cloud. That's when we launched Sage Business Cloud Accounting. And then in 2016, another career highlight of mine, we launched the world's first accounting chatbot. So that was our segue into AI and all of the emerging technologies that we now are doing in this, what we call 4.0 industrial revolution. And so now we're off to the races, and we're trying to understand, okay, who exactly do we serve? At the baseline in the core, we serve small businesses and nonprofits in the small business sector. In the medium-sized businesses, and we divide them and identify them based on the number of employees that the actual business has, medium businesses and nonprofits. And then we've got our good old pocket protector accountants that make sure that that money is the accountants and bookkeepers make sure that the money is correct for our small and medium-sized businesses. On the next slide, we actually look at the portfolio, and this is where it really gets really interesting as it relates to our portfolio and our model portfolio offering. Business Cloud, the actual Sage Business Cloud, is the overall actual framework of our product strategy. It includes our cloud connected products and our cloud native products. And you will see here that our goal is essentially to stay true to accounting, the core of our business, accounting and financials. We also bring in our people and payroll with those varying products. But our goal, our second goal, is to ensure that we, as the individual company that comes to us and uses our product and service, as they grow, they can migrate up market with our products. And they essentially be what we call C4L, customers for life. And so what you will find is that we are servicing actual businesses from I just got my tax ID number to up to 500 employees. We build on that, the actual accounting and financials, that core, right? And we service all different types of verticals, from construction, manufacturing, to nonprofit, educational institutions, and wholesale actual businesses. And the product set that we have, we create modules within the product set to accommodate whatever vertical that the actual customer needs. For instance, if you are a construction, manufacturing, or even on the Intech side, a nonprofit, we have those individual core features that you're going to need to run your business. On the next slide, the one thing I want you to focus in on is that 6.7 million logins per month. Our Sage customer, under the Sage Business Cloud vision, looking at this thing we call digital connectivity and a digital journey, our customer logs in, we have 6.7 million logins per month by our Sage customers. The key to this is that not only just are we an accounting software firm or accounting, financials, people, and payroll, but in order for those logins to occur, we have to connect with varying payroll and HR connections. We also connect through varying suppliers and partners. We actually are providing actual documentation to our customers' clients or their customer. 2 million invoices delivered over the course of a month. We also are looking at and communicating with varying financial institutions through bank feeds, where we are literally pulling transactions from varying banks, from some of the top financial institutions in the world down to the smallest of homegrown banks. We're pulling in those transactions so that our Sage customer can accurately understand what's going on a daily basis. From a regulatory authorities perspective, we must make sure that we are adhering to any guideline and or process or policy based on region, country, things like GDPR, VAT, all of those varying rules. We have to make sure that we are in compliance at all times. And then of course, generally, our Sage customers always have an accountant or a bookkeeper, and it's their responsibility. From our perspective, we help them ensure that they are compliant, and we aid them in providing them with the same type of tool and or software so that they essentially can log into their customer's account with no problem, without having to call them up or come to the office, seamlessly. This is what we call our end-to-end digital journey. And it literally is from finance, people, suppliers, partners, operations, end to end. Now let's look at it from a numbers perspective. For all the number geeks out there, everybody who wants to know what the financials are, because it's important when you're looking for a company, what have they done and what are they doing, or what are they saying that they're doing? So across the globe, we have 12,000 colleagues. We are a market leader in the UK, Canada, Ireland, France, Spain, and South Africa. We have a strong presence in the US, of course, with the acquisition of Sage Intacct, That company came with a lot of brand awareness. And of course, we're here doing things like this so that we can increase the brand awareness here in the US. From a financials perspective, we're at 1.59 million pounds of recurring revenue that comes in all the time through Sage. So, hey, to put it plainly, we got a little bit of money. And so we have the ability to hire, and that's good. We always want to make money so we can continue to be employed. And of course, we love our customers across the globe. We've got over 2 million customers, and our customers give us a 4.8 rating from a Trustpilot perspective out of 5. So they trust us, and that is a reflection of how we do business and who we are. So we're serving some of the world's most loved brands. Here's just a plethora of the brands that what we call that those brands trust Sage, and they help us, and we help them thrive in their business. So whether it's a century-year-old company that has decided to use Sage products, or the latest startup, we manage their business and we help all of these trusted brands thrive. So let's talk about what really makes the difference. It's the people that are on this call, and the people that you will meet as you walk through your interview process and your orientation. And the end of the day, the people make the difference, because every day we're dedicated to making businesses, someone else thrive. And I'll say it again, we are dedicated to making someone else thrive in what they've elected to do. Our culture is very simple. We have 4 pillars that we adhere to, and you will find that these pillars, once you become an employee of Sage, you will find that these pillars are what you, air quote, will be graded on an annual basis. We do the right thing, whether or not we're doing the right thing for our customers and our colleagues, to each other. So we start with the customer. What have you done lately for a customer? Where have you built those relationships? We even have a program under the Start With Our Customer pillar under this particular goal, where we have to actually place phone calls. We have what's called a closed loop survey, meaning that customers have been surveyed and either maybe they have an issue or a problem, or they just want to provide us feedback. Well, colleagues across the globe must call at least three customers during the course of a quarter to actually listen to the customer straight out. So we're not taking just general what we think the customer is saying. We actually are talking to them to know what they're saying. Together we succeed. We can't succeed individually. Obviously, old adages, there's no I in team, we are a true team. How have you as a colleague allowed and been part of being together and being a colleague that, on a team perspective, and being together so that we can all succeed? And then innovation to win, understanding how we should innovate based on that closed loop feedback, based on those things and challenges that our customers are having. How are we innovating to win? We always want to make sure that we're innovating. And then the last thing on this slide is our CEO during COVID was named one of the top CEOs for Glassdoor, and Keisha and I being co-leads of Build, and of course Celeste and the team. We've been in meetings with him. He is just like a regular British guy who wants to understand what's going on in your world. So no surprise that he got top CEO. One of the things from a philanthropic perspective that we created at Sage about 5 years ago was Sage Foundation. And this is to understand, to go into the community and actually not make, but say, hey, Sage colleague, if you have an actual partner or a charity that's close to your heart, the actual company, Sage, gives you 5 business days paid to go volunteer with that charity. It is something that, a lot of companies are doing it, and they obviously folks are out there making sure that they're in the community, but it's really something that's near and dear to our hearts, because we get to meet each other and we get to actually network, and we're doing things for our community. We're fundraising. We are really understanding from a social equality perspective and an economic stability perspective how we can give back. Now, one of the things on the next slide is I'll tee up my colleague and my co-lead, Keisha, if she's got back on and could come on camera. Oh, is she unmuted?
Let me look here. Should have been automatic, but let's see. Keisha, okay, I see Keisha. Let me make sure she can unmute.
Okay.
Okay, Keisha, you should be able to unmute now.
All right, cool. Awesome. So one of the things that we wanted before we move toward the panel discussion, we want to talk to you about Bill, and Keisha's going to come. Keisha was extremely instrumental in making sure that Bill came to life. She is an ally of Pride, a Pride ally, because we have several CSNs, and what we call CSNs, those are colleague success networks. You may know them as affinity groups or ERGs, employee resource groups. At Sage, we call them CSNs. But looking at what Pride, when they came about, she said to herself, hey, we need a Black professional network. We need a Black network for colleagues. And she went to leadership, and Build was birthed. So Keisha, I'll turn it over to you to talk about what we do with Build, and then I'll come back and close it out. Uh-oh. No, we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it says the microphone is on, so maybe you have to route the microphone to use the correct microphone through Zoom.
Is that better?
There it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Ah, there we go. See, no headphones. That's the problem. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Like Kate said, my name is Keisha. Keisha Ellis. I work for Sage. I've been at Sage for 4 years now, maybe 4 year-ish. Yeah. I work as a customer success coach. Basically, for Sage Business Cloud Accounting, that is basically the program for those customers that Kay said just got their tax ID and they have no idea what they're doing. They have no accountant. Some have accountants, but most of them don't, and they need basic accounting. So my job is basically holding their hand as they take their leap of starting their business. It's a lot of fun. I just started it in September. So it's definitely a roller coaster. Being a mom has definitely teed me up to do that job, but our customers are amazing. So I'm here to talk about Build at Sage. As Kay said, I was in Pride, CSN, as an ally. And one day they had a panel discussion, and I said, Pride is cool. We have a lot of fun, but, we're going to say we are a, diverse, equitable, inclusive environment. We need to make sure that we have a safe space for everyone. And my community is the Black community. So, I feel like we should have a Black professional network. So like Kay said, that's when Build was birthed. So Build stands for Blacks United in Leadership and Development. We provide professional social networking for Black employees at Sage. We're there to make sure that there's a positive environment. It all got started, we officially launched as a result of the murder of George Floyd. And we made sure that Sage Belong hosted some racial inequality and social injustice listening sessions across North America. Like Kay said, we call it a CSN. Most companies call it an ERG or an affinity group. The global leadership of Sage, actually, I reached out to them. Then they reached back out to me. And they said, hey, let's go ahead and get this started. I said, okay. They gave me a stack of paper, said, fill this out, do this. Oh yeah, you need a co-lead. And I went through co-leagues. I found out Kay wanted to do it. And as you guys can tell, Kay is thebomb.com. So, and at the time she was Inspirational Woman of the Year. So I was like, that there's no decision there. I need Kay as my co-lead. In the slide, it shows that it's me in that year prior to Sage. I was nominated for a Diversity and Inclusion Award, and Kay was the Inspirational Woman of the Year. Said she is my co-lead. Next slide. All right, so we at Build, we actually have tenets. And those tenets are to make sure that we hold Sage accountable for the things that we need. So our first tenet is our corporate initiative and goals. And basically what that is the initiative and goals basically influence the Black employee presence and require Sage to meet the Build goals that are pertinent to the Black employees. So we ask them for annual, and I do apologize, guys, we are working from home, and I do have a 7-year-old. She is having the time of her life back there. I apologize for that. So we at Build, we ask Sage, hey, we need an annual and mandatory racial equality training for not only colleagues, but we need them for our leadership. Because I know all of us have worked in different organizations where you might get that microaggression, and sometimes it's because people don't know, but if we have that training, they know. We also ask for annual demographic reports so we know where everyone stands in the company. We ask them, one of our other tenets is recruitment goals, so that we can have things like this, so we can reach out to organizations like HBCU CONNECT and have these job fairs to make sure that we see ourselves in our colleagues. We also want to make sure we see ourselves in our leadership. So that's another thing that we ask for. And then also to make sure that, across the board, it's diverse. We also have strategic programs. So these are activities that enhance the Black employees' experience through education and leadership sessions. So that's like the Atlanta Project, Build Do, the Build Roundtable, webcast, and something that we have called Build Talks. And then, of course, can't have an ERG without events. So that's, of course, we have events, monthly, quarterly, and annual events. They allow networking within Sage, as well as other CSNs. So we network with Sage Foundation. And when you do Sage Foundation, you might take a picture and find that your picture is in slides for HBCU CONNECT. Says I was in the picture above at an event we did with Girl Scout Camp. We also, next month, we are doing a networking event and an event with Pride at Sage. We also do virtual networking events, being that we're at home right now. So we can go to the next slide. All right, and so our main thing at Build, which stands for, again, Blacks United in Leadership and Development, is we want to make changes that matter, make connections that matter, have conversations that matter, and create opportunities that matter. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this back to my amazing co-lead Kay.
Thank you so much, Keisha. And so look, folks, that is Sage in a nutshell, in this whole kit and caboodle. We've got a lot going on. And so now I think, we're ready. I've been chatting lots of questions about our ERG groups. And I chatted back to say, yes, we have several ERG groups. And here's the deal. You can create your own if you don't see one that fits your needs. Our leadership is very open to understanding the needs of the colleagues. We have surveys quarterly to ask you questions as to what it is that you need and or want. But that concludes the actual keynote address. Mm-hmm. And I hope that it gave you just a touch and a little bit about who Sage is and why we're here today. Our goal, again, is to make sure that you understand, yes, you may not have heard of Sage before, but we are a global Fortune company, and we are here to ensure that businesses across the globe, that they thrive. And so if that meets your personal needs and that marries with your destiny and the path in your journey, then we want you to take the opportunity to come to Sage. So Will, I'll throw it back to you.
So, you know, I got to take the opportunity to ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
So I love the ASU connection. So I have to ask a HBCU question. Do you feel I think the answer is obvious, but do you feel that your HBCU experience, having gone to ASU, prepared you for what you do now, Sage?
I do, wholeheartedly. My story is maybe different from a lot of other people because I did not grow up here in the US, and I spent a lot of time being the only Black girl in the room or Black person in a room, or in the room of 3 or 4. My graduate, I was senior class, or I was junior class president and senior class president. There were only 10 of us in my graduating class from high school. You know, Department of Defense schools, Dodge schools. That experience, I thank my father for, and, you know, and I'm glad that I received it, but I also am glad that they said, because you need to be next to family, and we have family in South Georgia, and you've never lived here, you're going to this school. And I swore up and down the first year, I'm not going to that little school next to that river. It's in the country. I'm not going there, no. And of course, the only thing that my dad said, well, you need to make sure that you're in the band, because we had to learn how to play instruments.
Okay.
And of course, you need to get your schoolwork.
Right,
So,
yep.
but you're getting on this plane, and your uncle will be there to pick you up to take you to school. It totally prepared me, because it prepared me to be around my people in a way outside of my family, but it prepared me to be, it gave me the foundation. I mean, coming in freshman orientations, we had to learn about the history of our university. We had to learn about how Black people created this university. We also, in the School of Business, Peace Hall, we were walking around in the heat with suits on.
Mm-hmm.
So what we call suited and booted, full corporate dress.
Mm-hmm. And
it prepared me for being a middle level manager that I am, with aspirations of getting to where, you know, and a funny thing about, and Celeste may say this or not, she actually is my mentor, but I also report to her. Mm-hmm. And so understanding that dynamics of being a woman executive and all of those individual things, I'm telling you, that college experience is something I would never want to take away. And with Kamala, you know, being mm-hmm. the VP, it has brought an awareness right. to the intellectual capabilities yep. that HBCU grads have. Yep. And so to me, absolutely, positively.
So let me throw a Sage question at you. And this is going to be a question that is like a favorite question I have that I'll probably ask all the panelists. But for you personally, what is it that you like most about working for Sage?
I do like, I mean, the people, granted, every company, so here's what I'll say. Every company has its own little glows and grows, things that are beautiful and great, and things that we need, and challenges that we need to have, or that we need to address. Mm-hmm. But the people, like these panelists, you reach out, you ask them to do something, and they come. Even when we are rams going at each other in team meetings, or I think we should design it this way. No, the data says that we should do it this way. The customer says that they want it this way. Mm-hmm. Even in the midst of all of those individual things, because before I actually came to the market competitive intelligence team, and I mentioned during my intro that my background is marketing, I actually came to Sage as a product marketing manager, a senior product marketing manager. Okay. And so I work with all the technologists, all the engineers, all the product managers, and the marketing teams, and sales, and service and support. And even when we're having those back and forth battles, it's still at the end of the day, you can see the heart of people. And that's the reason why I stay at Sage, because at the end of the day, we literally are coming in trying to help someone else be better than they are through their business.
Excellent. So I want to thank you for keynoting for us, sharing not only more information about Sage, more information about Build, but also sharing your story as well. We appreciate it. And we couldn't do these types of events without folks like yourself volunteering your time. So thanks,
Thank
Kate.
you so much.
Yep. And so with that, I'll ask you to hang on for our panel discussion, but let me go ahead and introduce our first panelist, who is Celeste Turner Hall, Global Vice President of Marketing and Strategy. So Celeste, if you'd like to give us a little background on your path to Sage and what you currently do at Sage, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Sure. So first, hi, everyone. If you could give me a hi in the chat, that would be great. Usually we're in person, so it feels kind of lonely not getting some interaction from you. So I hope you're all doing well. So I've been at Sage for about 4.5 years. And as you mentioned, I am Global Vice President of Marketing Strategy. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. For those of you who are familiar with the DMV, that's Be More, born and raised in the heart of the city. I actually started off my undergraduate career at Syracuse. My mom became sick from cancer, so I had to come back home, finish my studies at University of Baltimore. Got my first job while I was in my last year, my first professional job while I was in my last year of college. It was a blessing. That started my marketing career. And then from there, I went on to get my master's in corporate management. Didn't want to do the MBA track. I wanted to focus a bit more on cultures of organizations, how to move organizations forward, less about the finance that you'll see in MBA tracks. I got that from the Notre Dame of Maryland. And then I just hopped around, man. I just enjoyed myself. I am what I consider a Renaissance marketer. By that, I mean, I've been in a lot of different positions, a lot of beautiful big companies. I love tech and innovation, so that's where I tend to stay. So most of the jobs that I've had were first of its kind. At Intel, they recruited me to launch some of their telco programs. I saw the first wearables that ever hit the market before anyone else did. When you all were still using 4G, I was in boardrooms talking about 5G strategy and infrastructure. At Sage, I launched some of our first SaaS products, responsible globally. And I made a very early decision that I just wanted a global career, and that's what I focused on. And it's just served me well. My roles varied, as I said earlier. So I've done everything from communications to product marketing, marketing strategy, direct marketing, online strategy, CRM. Now I'm over marketing strategy and intelligence. Today at Sage, if we fast forward to this current role, what's the best way to describe what I do? I act really as an internal consultant to various groups. So I consult on risk. So what's happening, what's emerging, what could impact Sage. I look at our competitors, what are they doing in the market? What potentially the impact is, how should we be responding? Customer needs, customer truths. And so that's across multiple countries. So US, Canada, UK, Ireland, Germany, Spain, South Africa. I'm sure I'm leaving a few countries out. And I have a global team. So I have a team in the US, a team in the UK, and a team in Germany. And they all work together to create some beautiful insights and some beautiful things that really are responsible for helping to drive Sage forward, helping us to compete, and helping us to really understand what our customers need and how we can better serve them. So with that, any questions for me? I think I hit fast, Will.
I have to engage because I feel like you've had a really interesting career journey, and you've ended up at Sage. So of course I'm going to ask you what you like most about working for Sage. But before you answer that, I like to ask you, considering the audience, right? So we've got, not only HBCU graduates, not only primarily African-American folks on the call, but we have some other diverse candidates as well. What is it that you think they should know about working for Sage? Like when you were making that decision, when you had this experience at some global brands, some great companies, and you were making that decision to come and work at Sage, what were some of those determining factors that you think this audience should know?
For me, careers are personal. That's where I'll start. You have to understand what you need, and it varies at different times. So when I started off very early in my career, I just wanted to learn. I wanted to be around smart people. I wanted to move up. I wanted to have new experiences. So I chose jobs around that. When I decided to move to Sage, I had been in a position where I was here. My boss was in Silicon Valley and Oregon at different points. And I just got married and I was just like, hey, I want to be in Atlanta. I don't want Silicon Valley prices to live. Oregon's pretty in the spring and summer, but I didn't want to live there. And so for me, it was a personal decision. So two things that I was looking for at the time: a company with a base in Atlanta, because before that, I guess maybe the last 10 years prior to that, my companies weren't here. I would negotiate, okay, I can stay in Atlanta, but I'm gonna fly back here once a week. So I was doing all kinds of negotiations to stay in the A. And then it got to the point where I was gone all the time. So I wanted to be here, and I was keen to understand a few things. Was it a software company? It had to be software, it had to be AI, it had to be something that I felt was going to be next generation moving forward. That was important to me. And it also had to have a base here. It didn't have to be headquartered, but it had to have a significant base here. And so the fact that we had a building in Lawrenceville, which is far away from me, but also Midtown, said, okay, Sage is committed to this area. So from that, I went on and said, okay, what do I like about, what do I want to understand? I had worked for huge brands. I had never worked for a company as small as Sage. And the interesting part is I was curious about that kind of experience. And it served me well, because if you work at these big brands, you get a lot of great experiences, don't get me wrong. But when you work for like the Microsofts of the world, because these were all my accounts, guys, I worked with Microsoft, struck deals with Cisco, all the big guys in tech. I worked with them all one-on-one in big deals. When you work at those companies, you don't always get access to the CEO. I'm literally in London one day, and I called the CEO's admin. I said, hey, can I get on a call? Can I talk? Is Steve in the building? Can I just get 10, 15 minutes? She was like, no, he's really busy. I was like, 10 minutes? She let me in, and he wound up talking to me for a whole half an hour, just chatting. So when Kay referenced earlier that he's kind of just an everyday regular guy who happens to run, $1 billion company with 12,000 employees, he comes across that way. If you work at some of these larger companies, I guarantee you couldn't just come in and say, hey, I happen to be in London, will you see me? Does that make sense? So I really like that part. And I got to touch so many parts of the business as a result of it being a little bit smaller than I'm used to, and people being a lot more open.
Excellent. And so you mentioned that you're currently working in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Are there opportunities that you're aware of in other parts of the country where Sage has a presence?
Sure, yeah. So, Sage Intact headquarters, that's in California, Silicon Valley area. Okay. Lots of opportunities there. And then also one of the things that you'll see on some job posts, it's important to look, some of these jobs are remote. Okay. So as a result, that gives you some flexibility in where you can live. So Atlanta, California, and then remote opportunities. Excellent. And I gotta add one more thing.
Please do.
You also have some opportunities to work with folks who are based in London. My boss is in the UK. So that's also important to understand.
Okay. Excellent. So thank you for sharing your experiences. I'll ask you to hang on for our panel discussion. I'll ask our candidates to ask questions in the chat. If you have any questions for Celeste, please drop those questions in the chat. And Celeste, I'll ask you to keep an eye on the chat for any questions that you can answer for our candidates. And with that, let me introduce our next speaker or panelist, who is Lauren Pearson, Content and Social Media Manager. Lauren, if you're ready.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, so I am originally from Colombia, South America. So I'm here representing the Latinx community. I'm a first generation immigrant. So I grew up in Colombia until I was 7, immigrated to the States. I've lived in the Midwest and then made my way south. Went to the College of Charleston, where I studied media communications and English literature. I've been at Sage for about a year. I started in March of last year. And I've been my concentration throughout my career has been in communications, marketing, social media. So I have 12 plus experience in those roles, most recently as a senior manager in my last role for an agency that ran events for Oracle, Arby's, Edible Arrangements, Riverbed, another tech company. So lots of kind of diverse experience across a multitude of industries. And yeah, joining Sage literally a week before we were sent remote. So it was an interesting time to join a company. I had actually been on maternity leave searching for a job, was back in my old role when for about 2 weeks when I got the call from Sage that they had my resume, that I was a good fit and they wanted to interview me. And then, yeah, started about 3 weeks later, fresh out of kind of maternity leave, kind of heading back into the workforce. And it was just a whirlwind time to join a company. So that's a little bit about me. Happy to take any questions.
¿Hablas español?
Sí, claro.
¿De qué parte de Colombia?
Soy de la costa de Barranquilla.
Barranquilla. Okay,
Sí.
bueno, bienvenidos. So
Gracias.
I know we definitely have some Latinx candidates that have joined us. So bienvenidos a todos. And thank you for taking the time. So how did you actually find Sage for the opportunity that you've landed now? Like, how did that come about?
So I, like I mentioned, I was on maternity leave. I actually really love the company I work for, but as a new parent, your whole life shifts, right? As Celeste was saying, you kind of have to make some personal decisions in your professional career when these things happen. So I was really looking for a company where maybe there was a little bit more of the benefits as a new mom and as a new parent that you're looking for, more stability, that sort of thing. So, like I said, I applied on a fluke. I think I applied for maybe 2 jobs while I was on leave, and Sage was just a really good fit with my resume at the time. And I got a call from them 3 weeks later, literally like 2 weeks back from maternity leave at my old job, and just it was frazzled, but it was a good transition at the time.
And so my favorite question, why for you personally, why do you feel Sage is a great place to work? And I know you've been there just the years so far, but what would you say is what do you like most so far about the company?
Okay, so I would have to say my work is great. I run the Sage Advice blog. So I am writing, editing, working with partners, Sage partners, our colleagues, and freelance writers to get content up on our blog all the time. So that is my day-to-day job. I also am backup lead on our social media channels. So running the US social media handles for Sage if my boss is out. So that in and of itself, just having that wider reach of an audience was really appealing. On the personal side, when you first start at Sage, you get 21 days PTO and the 5 days foundation days. So that was just an incredible from the start benefit that I just was not afforded before. And to me, that was really attractive. So.
And you're working out of the Atlanta location as well?
Yes, so I'm in Atlanta. We've been at home for a little bit over a year remotely, and I'm out of the Decatur office in Atlanta.
And I got a pretty good question, considering the fact that you came in and then it was COVID, right? And so you had to work remote.
Mhm,
How did
mhm.
how did that affect your onboarding? Like, did you
Yeah,
have
it
to
was.
implement like new remote onboarding?
I think I was one of the first classes that did the onboarding, like the actual onboarding experience remotely. So that was interesting. I did get 5 days in the office, so I got to meet a few people, not everybody. And then went through the onboarding remotely. I still did meet and greets with like 20 of our colleagues that I would work closely with and some stakeholders virtually through Teams. And it was interesting trying to schedule that. And this is the first kind of global company I've worked directly for. So scheduling meetings with folks in London and in the UK and in Ireland and in California was just something new to me, but kind of took bull by the horns and jumped right in from the get-go.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to thank you for taking the time out to join our panel. I'm going to ask that you also keep an eye on the chat. So if anyone has any
Absolutely.
questions, so if you got questions for Lauren, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. And I'm going to introduce our next two speakers, and then we'll go into our panel discussion. So thank you, Lauren. So let me introduce our next speaker or panelist, who is Tanya Richburg, Senior UX Researcher Lead. So Tanya, if you're ready.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I am what you call a senior user research lead. User research is basically about understanding the user when it comes to the products. I specifically work on the .com side, so that focuses on Sage.com. So just to let you know a little bit about myself, of course, I am alum of the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. I also have 5 years, well, it'll be 5 years in August with Sage. And as being with Sage, I have gone through about 3 different positions. When I first came on, it was as a digital experience manager. Then the teams merged and I became a senior UX researcher manager. And then now I was hybrid between 2 teams. And now I'm specifically focused on what we call the XD team, which is technically the user, the experience design team. And so from there, I'm actually the senior user research lead. As you can see here, the past roles, I'm gonna tell you, my role has not been just straight. You know, I left A&T, to be honest. I thought I had the job at Norfolk Southern, and I stopped interviewing and realized they didn't accept me. So I'm like, okay, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? So I try to do sales. Tanya is not a salesperson. She would never be a salesperson, and I accept that. So in the interim, I moved to Atlanta. I started working for Lucent Technologies, which of course is no longer in existence.
Wow, I used to work at Lucent.
Did you?
Yes.
Were you on the Abernathy?
No, I was in Ohio. We had a location in
Oh,
Ohio.
okay.
But I got a
So,
couple of team members as well that are on this call that used to work there.
okay.
Nice.
Lucent Technologies alum.
Um,
Okay. So I worked there. I worked in what they call like a gatekeeper asset. It's all about data. Then I went into finance side of it. But from there, it kind of led me into really diving into what data is all about. And the reason why I actually went into marketing, not to become like a quote unquote marketer. Back then, I went to become a marketing researcher. I always wanted to do data, and I thought that was the path I needed to go on. So as you can see here, did, like I said, everything from different consumer professional products companies, from Newell Rubbermaid to Kimberly-Clark. Also worked in sports for NBA, NASCAR, and PGA. I did work at Morrison Homes at the time, which is now Taylor Morrison. It was a UK company, but when the market crashed, they sold the American markets. and work for also with agencies. So I'm saying that all to say is that you may not have like a straightforward path, and that's okay. And it's good to sometimes tap into other types of areas that you might want to learn and understand more about. But that's basically, who I am. So I look forward to any questions.
What is it that you like most about working for Sage, for you personally?
So for me right now, because sometimes it goes into to seasons of why I like Sage.
Yeah, sure.
So right now it's actually my team working within the XD team. Once again, it's the experience design team. We are usually the first touch point that a user or a customer actually sees because it's on the .com. And so the team is very creative. I actually report to the acting creative director and principal designer. So it allows me to tap into those creative flows and quote unquote, as people say, juices. But it's one of those where once be able to use that analytics and that inquisitiveness to really understand about the user. So being able to see what I do as far as researching that user. So it may be doing interviews, it may be doing just different types of methodology within it that I can actually see that feedback going into the designs that you see on the purchase or like a purchase journey or the journey in, as a whole on .com and say, hey, that's part of me helping out the user because I look at myself as the voice of the customer. So being able to see that and work with a great group of designers is really key for me. Excellent.
So I know UX positions are growing at all over the industry. So for any of our candidates that are interested in UI/UX and UX research, feel free to ask Tanya some questions in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, and then we'll go into our panel discussion. So if you want to hang on, Tanya, for our panel discussion. In the meantime, I'll introduce our next speaker. So our next speaker or panelist is Angela Collins, Partner Marketing Manager at Sage. So Angela, if you're ready.
Hello, everyone. I am Angela Collins. I'm a Partner Marketing Manager here at Sage. I've been with Sage. This is my 5th year, celebrating a nice, healthy 5-year anniversary. I'm very excited about that. I like to say I'm a Texas peach. Like Kay, we have a similar background. I'm a military brat, so I spent a lot of time traveling the world with my parents. I spent the most of my young adulthood in Texas, and then we moved to Georgia, where I completed my high school and college here. I attended the University of West Georgia. I don't have an HBCU background. That's one of my biggest regrets. I have a lot of passion and enthusiasm and love for HBCUs and what they do for our students in our community. So that's a large part of why I wanted to participate today. I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I think that needs to be said as well, because although I didn't get that HBCU experience, I feel like that experience drew me to the culture. So hello, everyone out there. While at the State University of West Georgia, I majored in mass communications. And believe it or not, when I was attending college, I wanted to be a newscaster. Graduated, looked at the salaries for newscasters, and I was like, they don't even give you insurance. So I quickly had to pivot. I transitioned into PR. I got my first big role at the Home Depot in their corporate office. I got that position because I attended a networking event just like the one we're having virtually today. I sat next to a lovely AKA who became my manager. She really opened doors for me and helped me to get a footing in the organization. I spent a couple of years there before moving into healthcare. I got my master's degree from Troy University. Decided I wanted to work for the CDC. And one of the best ways to get in with the CDC at the time was through consulting. So I accepted a role with a consulting agency where they placed me in various roles at CDC, the Army, VA, doing IT implementation. So that's how I started working in IT, and I moved, did some work in hospitality with IHG, and also met someone on LinkedIn, met a recruiter, and that brought me to Sage. I reached out and said, hey, could you tell me a little more about Sage? Want to learn about the culture at Sage and any roles that meet my experience and interest in. We met up at, I think it was Maggiano's. She took time out, away from work to do that. So we met. She's like, you know what? I think your personality and your skill would be a great match for someone that's looking for a role. So I ended up interviewing for that role. Didn't get it, but she called me back. She's like, I think I have another one. So that was a great synergy. I think I interviewed with perhaps 5 people. Before being accepted for this position. So my role, and I'm going to cut it short here, on the partner marketing team is to work with our partners. We have partners that serve small to enterprise level. So it might be a mom and pop where it's just the owner that's doing everything. They're doing the selling, they're doing the marketing. Or we might work with companies that have a little more assistance by having more full organizations where they have marketing teams, sales teams, dev teams, or what have you. But my role is to make sure all of our partners have the marketing resources that they need to effectively market our products. So developing campaigns for them, delivering presentations to them, making sure they have funding to do the types of work that they need to do to be successful. So that's a bit about me and my role.
Excellent. So before we start our panel discussion, I'm going to ask you, and while our panelists get ready, so I'm going to ask all of our panelists to turn their video on, but I'm going to ask my favorite question to you, Angela, before we start that panel discussion, and that is, what is it that you personally like about working for Sage the most?
Oh God, there's so many things. I think the top 2 things that I like most about working for Sage is the fact that Sage is a very people-centric company. I really have a lot of respect for the company. When the pandemic hit, the company made a swift pivot. Like within weeks, we were all at home. They were figuring it out. They weren't, they were trying to make sure that we were taken care of. And that's been the experience that I've had with Sage from the very minute that I started. And, you can look at the position that they've taken with Build and developing Build, so soon after the George Floyd incident. They really try to keep a pulse on what's going on in our communities. And that's what I really love about the company.
Excellent. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences. You can go ahead and leave your video on, and I'm going to ask the other Sage panelists to turn their video on as I'm going to actually ask you guys a few questions, but then to our candidates, you guys got to help me out. So to all of our candidates, if you have any burning questions for the Sage team, drop those questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to pull from your questions as well as the questions that I have. So let me do a little housekeeping here because I want to pin all of our panelists. Let me add to the spotlight. We're going to do this right here. We're going to do this real good. Add spotlight, and add spotlight. So are you all able to see the video from our panelists? You guys see each other? Okay, cool. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some of the questions that I have queued up, and then
oh, never mind, sorry. I was like, I don't see one.
You good?
Yeah.
And actually, so I have some questions that I'm going to direct to specific people, but then some questions this is going to be open, so you all feel free to volunteer. So I'm gonna go round robin. So my first question is actually for Kay. So Kay, what advice can you offer candidates interviewing with Sage to maximize their chances of being hired? So if I'm a candidate, I love what I hear. I see a role that I'm interested in. I get a chance to interview. And before I go in that interview, what would your advice be to me?
Well, luckily, everyone here, if they're applying for a position, they've seen the slides, so they actually have some in-depth knowledge of the company which is something that you absolutely have to do. And it's more than just going on the website. It's actually possibly doing the research, looking at their latest posts. Lauren mentioned, she manages Sage Advice, understanding what we're actually saying to our customers in the market, understanding how the market is responding to us. So, because what will happen is in your interview, you will be able to use some of those things, and you may shock some of the people that you're interviewing with because, oh, you know that? Oh, okay. Or it may be hot news that they haven't seen in their email, and then you're talking about it in your interview. So I would definitely say make sure that you understand that company, understand what their journey has been. And I mentioned this in the intro, match that to your pathway and to your destiny. Because you want, not only are you looking for a job, you're selecting a company, they're selecting you, but you're also selecting them. And that's the one thing that is the important for you to have the comfort. And in the last few slides, when we end, I'm going to give you some tools and tips on how you can do that as you all are out there interviewing. But that's what I would say. That's pretty much, you need to understand who you're selecting from a company or corporate perspective. And then obviously they need to understand you.
So I have an open question from the chat. So I'm going to mix in some of my questions I see in the chat with some of the questions I have prepared for you guys. So I thought was a good question. So once we went into the pandemic, different companies did different things with regards to employees and working from home. So what has Sage done to support its employees during the pandemic? And this is from Falake in the chat. So that's an open question. If anybody might want to volunteer, and if now default to Lauren, since she got onboarded and had to, I'm sure, be supported.
I'll answer all the pandemic questions. So one thing, and I don't know if this was pandemic related, but because we were all working from home, they noticed that we weren't taking our time off. So they were able to roll over a week of PTO to this year, which was just, I mean, for parents, for anyone who's working, remotely and kind of worrying about like, oh, I don't get to take my vacation last year because, everything that's going on. That was like a huge value add, I think, for our company and for our colleagues. So I think that's one example I can give. I'm sure there's a million more, but I'll say that.
Keisha.
Yeah.
I have another one. Well, I actually have two. I can say I know when we first heard that things were bad, well, once the virus hit Atlanta, me personally, I went to my manager and I said, hey, I'm scared. I don't feel comfortable being in the office. The very next day I was sent home. Laptop, monitors, go home. And I probably was one of the first people in Midtown that was sent home. So it was no question about it. If you were uncomfortable, go ahead, work from home. The second thing is also this year, because things have been tough, they also gave us some mental health days on top of our normal PTO and our floating holiday. So they're really big on making sure that we're okay. Just 100%. We know you have a job to do, but your mental health, your well-being is first and foremost, because you can't do your job if you're not in a good place. So they're really good about making sure their colleagues are okay.
Excellent. And Celeste, did you want to add something? Actually, so my next question was going to be for you, Celeste, and that is, I noticed that you've worked at some of those other big companies, and I wanted you to kind of point out what are some of the big differences. So we may have some candidates that, like you, may have worked at some bigger companies, but then coming to Sage, what are some of the differences they can expect?
So one of the biggest differences is access to leadership. I know every single person who's in C-suite role, and I knew that before I was promoted to VP. So that's key, and they know me by name. It's not, see me on the street, I think you work for me, work with me. They actually know me by name. So that's a big difference. Also, in larger companies, you may know a lot about the strategy, but you can't get your hands into as many things. So if you are like me and you are intellectually curious, and I'm very intellectually curious, it's a bit fun, right? Also, one thing that's different is you can actually see, so this is a good example. In marketing roles, oftentimes they'll measure you on things like, you know, how many leads are coming through the door, how many sales you're getting. But one of the things you get to see, because Sage is in several forms, going through several forms of transformation, is your impact in that transformation. Very different. And then I'll pull one last example that both Kay and Keisha mentioned. They started Build. A lot of places you can't say, oh, this makes sense. This is an argument. They have beautiful t-shirts that I'm still waiting for my version, but you know, you know, a lot of places that are larger, you can't say that. Now, I will say there are benefits to larger businesses as well, right? But I'm here for Sage, so I'm not going to tell you those things.
Excellent answer. So let me shoot the next question to Tanya. So Tanya, do you feel that you can be yourself culturally speaking at Sage? Because I can, you know, I worked before I started my own company. I worked at Lucent Technologies like yourself. I used to be AT&T Bell Labs, so I was way old school. And I used to kind of, now this was before we had an ERG group, but I was new. I'm a kid. I grew up in the hood, you know, and I went to Hampton University, changed my life, and super grateful for it. But I was grateful for those internships I had. But when I used to go to work, I kind of felt like, you know, they're paying me to be here, but I got to kind of assimilate, and I got to kind of put on I had to step my game up, but almost feel like I had to be a different person a little bit. And one thing that comes out in a lot of these events, because this is one of my favorite questions, is do you feel like that you can be yourself culturally? And what is your perspective on that at Sage?
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I think it depends on your group. The group that I'm currently in, like I said, is very diverse, very creative. It's almost like a namaste type, everybody's in, and we just come together in kumbaya type atmosphere, because it is very creative. And so as a result of that, I am able to express myself more being around people who actually acknowledge it, who actually try to get it out of you more if they feel like you're going into that bubble. And so they kind of welcome those differences for each one of us to be different in which we are. But I do think it is based off of sometimes the overall team can differ. And that can go for any company that I have experienced. To me, the best times or my most influences is mainly not as a company overall, but the team that I spend the most time with. And that's where I can actually say I can be myself.
Excellent. And one of the benefits of events like this, where it's a diversity event, we've got sort of an intimate audience. Let's have some real talk, right? Because something good can come out of it for both sides. So I appreciate that answer. So Angela, I want to get some involvement for you as well. So I'm looking for some questions in the chat, but I also wanted to ask you your thoughts on a couple of things. So in your role, do you have to engage with those that are building the actual technology behind the products? And then what is that like? And you know, what has that been like for you in your role?
That's a great question. Being on the partner marketing team, you have to have an understanding and awareness of what exactly our products do, so that you can develop those campaigns for our partners to use. So that requires you to work a lot with the various marketing teams. I feel like when you're on the outside looking in, you don't understand how many different marketing verticals a company might have. You have your partner marketing, you have your product marketing. So I have to work with them to get their messaging, to understand how I need to position specific products for our partners so that they can go out and leverage the materials that we develop for them.
So I've got an open question for all of the panelists and whoever wants to volunteer to answer this. So I see a question from Valencia Wade, and her question is around experience and being a viable candidate. So if you maybe don't have internship experience, but you went to undergrad, you went to grad school, you actually have some corporate experience. Maybe it wasn't an internship, maybe you had to work through your way through college. Would you still be considered as a viable candidate if you don't have those internships, but maybe you have some corporate experience and you worked your way through school, you got your undergrad, and you got your graduate school degree? What are your thoughts on that? Any advice? So Celeste, I see your hand.
Hey, that's my story. So as I said earlier, my mom got sick with cancer, had to come home, worked partly, didn't do the internship route, found a job, sold myself, and then my career started. So I can't impress on you enough that you define your own story. You have to learn how to pitch your skills, and you have to learn how to sell and listen to what people say is important. Sometimes we don't understand that our resume is marketing, right? So it's a billboard. And if you don't present the billboard and you don't craft the billboard to what the folks want, then they might pass you by. I'll give you one other example. When I came to Sage, they originally talked to me about a position that was a bit lower than I would have even considered. The recruiter called me, she was talking to me, and I said, listen, I won't ever consider that role. I said, but if you ever get a role that does X, Y, and Z at this level, call me back. I looked at it through LinkedIn, she called me back because I sold myself, right? You have to learn how to sell. Pitching, don't be we're gonna have a real talk conversation. One of the things that I see sometimes with people, women and people of color, is that you don't pitch yourself hard. Go for it. All they can do is say no, right? But don't do it, then you miss out on an opportunity. Sell yourself.
So you guys, all of you candidates out there, I hope you're listening, because you're not only getting to know more information about Sage, but you're also getting mentored right now. No, I think that was a great question, and I see another question in the chat. So we're going to ask questions. I'm going to leave a couple of minutes at the end for Tonya and HR to speak to the opportunities, and then we'll give the last words to Kay. But I got a couple more questions that I see here in the chat for our Q&A. And so this question is from Shaka. What are some of the challenges that Sage has had or experienced, and some examples of how they work through those obstacles? And what I'm thinking of is challenges, I guess, with customers or customer solutions, or maybe the products that you're developing, or challenges that maybe you've had representing Sage. So this is an open question to anyone that might want to volunteer with a story about a challenge that you guys may have had to overcome as a company.
I think one of the things that we are challenged with daily, and I hope it looks like my camera is doing something funky or funny, but hey, we're just gonna keep it moving. We are challenged with ensuring as we grow as a business that we still keep the forefront of our minds that the customer and their specific needs at the time they are within their business life cycle. So you grow as a business just in general, and that means that you're continuing to add more people, add more resources, money, etc. But sometimes we also have to take a step back, and we have to actually look at what those individual customers needs. And that's why when I mentioned in my keynote that we are challenged with, our CMO and our CEO has challenged us to go back to the drawing board, pick up the phone, and actually talk to our customers, because we kind of got in our head a little bit about what we thought we knew. this is the way we do things. This is the Sage way. And therefore, to a certain extent, we may not have moved as swiftly as we needed to because we were stuck in this. It works for us. It's working for our company. It's working for the customers that we currently have, but perhaps the market had moved a little bit ahead of us. I do think that right now we are evaluating in general. We just, Angela will tell you, we just got wrapped up Partner Summit, where we unveiled, our new brand, the actual new brand that just a small piece our CMO did, but unveiled some of the new brand opportunities. We're looking at ESG, the environmental, social, and governance, that social impact and responsibility. We're understanding that at the core of the product and service that we offer are people that are conscious about certain things that are going on in the world. So we have to keep our customers and our people at the forefront of everything we do. And as we grow, yes, it becomes challenging, but the idea is that we have people on the ground every day who want to walk that line and want to live in this journey for small and medium-sized businesses. I mean, from a personal perspective, coming in as a product marketer and trying to understand what our strategy was. We had a couple of years where we were really trying to understand who we want to be in this world of accounting software and financial solutions. And so to see that transition and that change and to be here for it has been one of the highlights for me, because you can see where leadership actually cares and they want you to do, and we all want to do the best that we can for these customers.
Excellent. So excellent message to kind of round out our live Q&A and our panel discussion. I saw that there are some more questions in the chat and some technical questions in the chat. So what I'll commit to do is I'll save the chat log, and if any of those questions that were not answered, I'll ask for some help from the Sage team, maybe to answer those offline, and then I can email those Q&A to the candidates. So appreciate all of the questions and interactivity. But for this next portion of the event, as we kind of close out here, is I want to hand it over to Tonya in HR to talk about next steps. So let me share my screen again real fast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Tonya Pedigo. I actually manage the recruitment for North America, and I want to thank the panel. They did an amazing job. I appreciate every one of you for participating in this event. You guys did amazing. We already have about 20 applicants so far from the link that I sent, so I'm super excited. But I wanted to share with you, I think they mentioned before, we acquired a company called Sage Intacct several years ago. So as we look at how many positions we have across the US, we actually have 188 roles open. And so what that means is we have roles in Atlanta, Lawrenceville, Beaverton, San Jose, remote. So I just want to let you know there's several opportunities, and it's all functions. I mean, we're building a sales team in the Lawrenceville office, the Sage Intacct team. So we're hiring probably 10 to 15 in our Lawrenceville office. We have engineer roles that we have that's based in San Jose, or they can be remote. Customer success, product, marketing, finance, partners and alliances. Like I said, we have any role that you can think of open right now. And also too, we continue to open more roles. So if for some reason we don't have a role that fits you today, I think Celeste gave a great opportunity. We'll reach back out to you. I mean, the idea is for us to make a connection. We actually partnered with HBCU CONNECT back in August, and we're really committed to diversity and inclusion. What my goal is to have organizations like HBCU that I'm partnering with each one of our CSN groups. It's not just about how we bring in the talent, it's also how do we give back to the community. I know that Will and I had discussed maybe having a career session. We can give back. How can we help you do your LinkedIn profile, resume, network, show you different ways on how to, to get to land a position. So I think it's just very important that we've made this connection, and I'm very happy that we're able to participate in this. And so If you have any questions, you can email us at careers@sage.com. You can actually go to sage.com at careers. You can go to Sage Intact is separate. So I just want to let you know, we do have 2 separate sites because we haven't integrated yet, but the links are on this slide right here. You can actually email me personally, any one of our recruiters. We are committed that we will reach out to anyone that applies. Also the list that I have, we're going to go through that. So again, this is not just checking off a box here. We are actually hiring. We're actually going to reach out to people, network, and really committed to bringing. I mean, I've already seen the resumes. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to start calling people next week. So thank you so much for participating.
Excellent. And thank you for partnering with us to do this and to our candidates. I'm going to hand it over to Kay for our final words. But before we do that, what I like to do is when people get interviewed and when you guys get hired, you guys let me know, because I'm going to interview you and we're going to do a video and we're going to let everybody know that you guys got hired at Sage when that happens. So you guys make sure to take advantage of the opportunities. These are real opportunities. Sage is committed to looking and reviewing the candidates that we present because you guys have volunteered your time. You wanted to learn more about Sage. So we're sharing your resume with Sage. They'll review those resumes, but then there's also instructions. So if Tonya, if you could drop that into the chat one more time, and I can also email it out afterwards so I can get with you on that. But without further ado, Kay, I'll hand it over to you to end our event.
Awesome. So one of the nuggets one of the things that I like to do is give a nugget every time I speak. And I think this is a Sage, I said Sage nugget, and it's entitled, "You're More Than a Diversity Hire." And there's a reason for that. So on the next slide, I attended this workshop with Dr. Angelique Adams, who is total Black Girl Magic, and she is has all of the technology, has worked for NASA, MIT grad, all of these accolades. But she talked about the fact that at the end of the day, you need to have a way to inventory your accomplishments, and you need to talk about them, which is one of the things that, you know, one of our panelists talked about today. You need to track your accomplishments. So here's something to take back with you that you heard here at Sage, a little nugget. It is how to track your accomplishments. It's a chart that simply says to describe what you've achieved and essentially how you did it. So I achieved X, Y, and Z by doing 1, 2, and 3. And the idea is that you track this accomplishment, have this accomplishment tracker over the course of your career. And like you know, and like we've said, your actual resume is a billboard, but this accomplishment tracker is something that you can speak to, because the resume is what essentially gets you in the door. You've got to then convince and be a believable storyteller of your story. So you have to define what your story is. You need to describe it. I achieved X, Y, and Z by doing 1, 2, and 3. You've got to quantify it by a success metric. How is this accomplishment quantified? What did you do? Was there a percentage of increase? Were you able to touch a different, a specific vertical or specific customer? You need to understand externally what's the relevance. So why should anyone care? Why was this important to my organization, or why would it be important to someone else? You've got to make sure that you are telling your story. And then you need to really internalize it and understand, why is this accomplishment important to you? I mentioned that one of my career highlights was that we created the Stand Up to Cancer card. And of all of those companies that I was able to visit and or launch products for, that particular one was something that I felt that I was actually doing for other people. So it was relevant to me, and that's why it's on my list, in addition to the chat bot. So this is accomplishment tracker. Is just very simple. Put in an Excel, Word, Trello, whatever you use, but OneNote, but you need to write down your accomplishments so that when you walk in or Zoom in or Teams in to tell your story, that you understand what exactly your story is by what you've accomplished. Your story has to be believable. And so, you know, make sure you create your accomplishment tracker. We thank you all so much on behalf of SAGE, on behalf of the Blacks United in Leadership and Development, the BUILD team, as well as all of our CSNs and the talent acquisition team. Hey, let's face the next steps together, and we hope to see you at SAGE.
You know what? We gotta do a group picture real quick. So everybody that's still on, we got about 78 people still on. So let me close my slides out. And anybody that's comfortable with turning on their video or their camera, let's go ahead and get a group shot real fast. So let me unpin A real fast. Let's see. Move spotlight. Put the view in gallery view. So anybody that's comfortable with turning on your video, please go ahead and turn on your video. I'm gonna do a couple of screenshots here, and I want to thank you guys for coming. Please do take advantage of the opportunities. I will follow up with everyone via email. You guys know I am really good and proficient at sending out email because we want you guys to make sure you come to these events and take advantage. So I will follow up with an email on next steps. And yeah, go ahead and turn on your videos and let's get a couple pictures and screenshots of your smiling faces. So let's see here. Everybody say cheese. We got a few more people turning on cameras. All right, Greg, let me get a smile, Greg. Hey, welcome everybody. This is great. You guys, hey, this inspires me when you guys take advantage and you come to these events. For me, this is like a life passion to try to create opportunities and connect. Thus the name HBCU Connect. So you all just make this real, you know, for me. And it gets really real when you guys start interviewing and those offers start going out, and then we can tell those stories. All right, so I want to thank you all for coming. Appreciate you all, and good luck. So look forward for a follow-up email from me, and I'll get with the team on those next steps and share those next steps with you. Take care, everybody. Good night. Thank you. Take care.